Third speaker of the team.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me the floor. The government side believes that taking taxes to reduce inequality is very much different than taking gambling money in order to reduce inequality, ladies and gentlemen. We also believe that, you know what, when the second speaker comes up and talks about taxes in general, that is not the purview of the debate, because we feel that when the very intention of the government of taking taxes, there's a social contract innately existent as an obligatory response to the particular government. Besides that particular tax, ladies and gentlemen, we don't think a person buying gambling tickets has a direct moral relevance at all. The moment the motion states whether something is right or wrong, this is the direct moment we act. The responsiveness of an ethical scenario is being built up, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that they fail to understand. Now, I'm going to talk about the primary issue of this debate, ladies and gentlemen, whether the whole concept of taking money from these particular tickets in order to actually cater for social welfare is moral in the first place or not, ladies and gentlemen. Keeping in mind that in these Scandinavian countries, the government takes a huge amount of taxes from every individual at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is something that the opposition side has come and failed to counter and engage. That they have not said anything on the fact. They have not said anything on the fact that the people are taxed so highly, ladies and gentlemen. So they accept that the people are already paying a huge amount of sum to the government. Now, let's talk about the concept of social welfare that came from our side, ladies and gentlemen. We say the concept of social welfare is something that is any scenario that occurs for the good of the people in general, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is where, as an obligatory action of people surviving in the society where the government is governing, they're already giving taxes, ladies and gentlemen. Now, besides that, the big assumption that this side of the house has made is that every single individual, besides the payment of taxes, wants to willingly give more money to the government in order to actually do good for the other people in the economy, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is the biggest assumption that they have actually made. We said that there's an individual choice at the end of the day. If I, as an individual, want to do anything in order to build roads and houses, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that is my own individual action that I might be willing to contribute to. But we say, ladies and gentlemen, most of the people, a majority of the people, after paying such a huge amount of tax, may undertake charitable responses in other actions, but they will not be willing to give money to pay for houses and the government actions at the end of the day, because they're already paying for it. Now, thank you, sir. They've given two examples which are irrelevant. However, I'm still going to counter. So they have harped on about casinos. First of all, governments do not actually run the casinos. Second of all, even if they tax from it, casinos operate as organizations. Every single business organization are taxed. This is totally different from their profits. This is totally different from the scenario of a particular we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking. And on the second level, they talk about tobacco. We say that that particular scenario, it is actually to obliterate a social harm, ladies and gentlemen. So that example is totally irrelevant at the end of the day. They spoke about one primary example of Iceland and another country, ignoring the rest of the countries, ladies and gentlemen, saying that, you know what, the governments are bankrupt. We say that, ladies and gentlemen, the first level, if the governments are bankrupt, it is the government's fault. So if it is the government's fault in the first scenario that they are bankrupt, we say the government has no right to take additional money outside of the purview of the taxes from those people in order to undertake the work that they have to undertake in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. We say the people in general of those because the national lottery is in a national scale, their money should not be actually used in the context of this. We have told you how it is not the intention of the people buying the lottery tickets to actually cater for the society. Let me tell you exactly why a person buys a lottery ticket. If I want myself to be engaging into these probabilistic activities, I want to have a higher chance of winning a lot of money. Now, the person who is actually buying a lottery ticket, their sole intention and the only intention is to make a lot of money out of it, which basically is why they are buying the tickets in the first place. Now, these individuals are not actually bearing an informed choice of whether I actually want to pay for the society in general, because at the end of the day, they have no choice of this particular scenario. We don't think these people should be manipulated and forced into paying their money at the end of the day and diverting these funds. No, thank you, sir. Into such scenarios where the society is being benefited in general. Ladies and gentlemen, we also say they've come up and also told us how the people, people might pay taxes, these particular scenarios as a charitable response for their own self-interest. Two responses to that. We say, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, it is really funny because if I want a road to be built next to my house just by paying the lottery ticket, I don't think the government will actually listen to my personal response and build a road next to my house. On the second level, ladies and gentlemen, we say that at the end of the day, they are basically assuming that all the people that are actually engaging into lottery want to engage into charitable activities in the first place. Before I move on to the next issue, your point.
Exactly where do you get this presumption that the government will take money through lotteries? At what point in this debate has it been made a mandatory measure that the government takes money through lotteries? It's still a
Sir, this is exactly what the motion states, that the government will take money for social causes. Very funny, POI. This is exactly what we're saying, that as the government is mandatorily taking this money, we think it is very wrong, and that was under the definition. Mr. Speaker, even more important thing that the only thing they have had to say is that, and we have actually told you that there's no requirement of this money in this current scenario from these particular people because it's unjustified. Majority of the countries are actually enjoying a very good livelihood. This particular amount of money is not required in that part of the Scandinavian country. The only two countries that they mentioned, we've already told you how it's the government's own fault, and these particular people who in the first place do not want to pay, therefore you cannot force people to pay something, and this is actually very sad that you are venturing into something that you are mixing the concept of social welfare with profit, ladies and gentlemen, and this is something which is wrong. Now we've also explained to you how a person who might be buying a lottery ticket might lose everything, ladies and gentlemen, and if he sees his next door unemployed labor getting social welfare benefits, he will have a huge grudge, and this is something we feel that they will come up with huge frustrations, ladies and gentlemen, just because his money, which he lost, is being catered to somebody else who is actually getting social welfare when he is much worse off. We don't think government, where after having responsible in the society, this extra additional frustration should not be imposed upon a particular person, ladies and gentlemen. Now therefore, we have actually established to you on moral grounds why the social welfare benefits should not be actually mixed with something that at the end of the day, the people does not have an informed choice of whether they want to or not. The government is not actually asking them whether they want to or not. It is immoral to go against a person's own personal wishes, Mr. Speaker. We think at the end of the day, this is totally immoral. The opposition side has failed to come up and show us exactly any form of justifications as why this should be undertaken. And for all these reasons, we believe we take the debate home. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much for that speech. We now invite the third speaker of opposition, the opposition.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first begin by outlining this magnificent act of slime from side proposition that is immersed in the whip of the government, wherein they came and said that, well, we are going to compulsorily ask every person living in Sweden or Finland or Iceland to purchase national lottery. Are we going to mandatorily ask them to purchase lottery because, is that what the motion says? We think not. We believe, and this is what has emerged from the first two speakers on side government, which is that people will buy lotteries if they want to, because there is a culture of gambling and some people want to maximize their investment through some opportunity of windfall, however slim the probability of such windfall may be. So the way in which this debate has been understood so far is that people purchase lottery tickets voluntarily if they want to, and the government may use the revenue that accrues to it through such activity for purposes of social welfare. The second grouse that side opposition has with the side government is that they have completely negated the need that exists in Scandinavian countries for more funds for social welfare. Now, we do recognize that these are countries with a high human development index. These are countries that have set standards for a lot of of other countries of the world as to the kind of development that one wants to pursue. However, we cannot be blind to the fact that in the current scenario, in the current state of financial crisis that is plaguing the world, countries like Iceland and Finland are in financial doldrums, ladies and gentlemen, and that is not a fact situation that we can blind ourselves to. And there is a clear need in terms of the need for financial resources to devote ourselves to activities of social welfare of the same standards that we previously were known for, ladies and gentlemen, so as to ensure that our people do not suffer a setback in their quality of lifestyle as a result of the current financial crisis. Now let me go on to the themes that emerged in this debate. Now first we need to talk about the burden of proof, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe that on this sole ground the opposition wins the debate. Now what could the proposition have said in this debate? That there is something so harmful, so repugnant in the act of using funds raised through national lotteries in social welfare programs, that it is completely not justified. On the other hand, they have merely run a debate on logical abstraction, saying that there is a logical inconsistency between the motives of taxation and the motives of gambling. Now this is something I don't agree with and will come to later in my speech. However, other than saying that there is a logical inconsistency, they have not demonstrated to us that there is a moral harm that is so substantial, that is so intrinsic, that it will damage the fabric of our society, that it will damage the ethos of our culture, and will suffer a setback that cannot be remedied in any way. None of this has come through from the side government. They have merely asserted that there is a logical inconsistency, and this is not harm enough to prevent this proposal from going forward. Secondly, they could have said that the costs of undertaking such a measure would drastically outweigh the benefits that are arising from this measure. Again, something that they have not done. Now let me come to the second theme that has emerged in this debate, which is the mere flippant assertion that they have made that there is a logical inconsistency between motives of taxation and those of purchasing lottery. Now the side proposition has come forward and said in the two speeches that we gave that taxation is not always on a voluntary basis, that taxation can also be done on what the proposition will consider to be vices of the people, such as alcoholism, such as smoking, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, taxation is not income tax alone, and income tax is, when you go and pay money to the government on the basis of the amount of money you earn in a year, and we have already asserted that this is not done on a purely altruistic basis. There is a definite self-interest involved here. I mean, if the super rich, the super wealthy in America are asking for the rates of tax slabs to be retained at the level they were during the Bush era regime, then that clearly signifies a self-interest in the people, ladies and gentlemen, and that is something we cannot be blind to. The second point relating to the argument of logical inconsistency is that taxes are not always voluntary, that sometimes governments do tax what can be considered by some people to be socially wasteful activity, such as alcoholism, gambling, tobacco, smoking, etc., which and therefore by that perspective there is nothing that is unprecedented about the proposal that the opposition is bringing forth. Now the third theme that arises is regarding the futuristic problem. They said that if we encourage this system where the self-interest of the people is being detoured, is being used to fund socially useful activity, then it will entrench a culture wherein people will no longer come and voluntarily for altruistic motives pay for social welfare. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that in the current state, in a nation state, the government is the sole source of social welfare. And if the government is the sole source of social welfare, then the predominant funds which are used for social welfare are going to come through taxation, and taxation is within the coercive power of the government, ladies and gentlemen. So there is no question of people not. Yes, sir.
So you need to understand, when you yourself concede that countries like Finland and Iceland are in crisis, social welfare programs are already at a low because the government does not have enough budget. In this scenario, if people have to buy tickets and lose money, doesn't it make them more worse?
Siddhant, sir, that is what we are saying. We are not going to goad these people on to go and buy lottery tickets. We are not saying that they have to mandatorily buy lottery tickets. However, we are saying that some people do gamble even in the current scenario, and if they want to gamble in the current scenario, instead of completely gambling and enriching a corporation that is going to appropriate these profits for itself, they might as well come and gamble by buying lottery tickets from the government, which will use these funds to fund social welfare programs. Anyway, coming back to the futuristic problem, what I was saying was that taxation is within the coercive machinery of the state, and you cannot say that anything, any kind of culture of selfishness, and this is merely an assertion coming from their part, will prevent the government from going ahead and taxing these people on whatever their income, on whatever socially wasteful activity that they're indulging in, ladies and gentlemen. The next theme that I'll be coming to is is in response to the argument that people willingly will not go and buy tickets while they can, put this money for charity, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we don't agree with the conception of an individual as a Hobbesian, selfish, brutish, nasty being that the other side would like to portray human beings as. However, we do consider that human beings do have a certain intrinsic tendency to gamble, and we are willing to accept that. That's why there is a culture of gambling in this country, right? That there are gambling houses thriving in this country. However, we believe that taking into account that human trait, we might as well capitalize on that activity by using the funds that will accrue to us by devoting it to a socially useful exercise, ladies and gentlemen. And this is something that they have completely failed to countenance. So on the grounds that have been submitted so far, I would like to propose and say that this debate, oppose and say that this debate should go to the opposition. Thank you.
Right, we thank the speaker for his speech and we now move on to the reply portion of the debate and invite the first reply from opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the opposition reply speaker, I'd like to first, commend my whip speaker for being extraordinarily generous and kind to the proposition, in that he's thematized and compared our arguments. It is my contention, and I disagree with him here, that none of their arguments, in fact, at any point of time, clashed with any of us. They were merely arguments to derive wriggle room around the logical inconsistencies that we posed in their approach. And for that, I'd like to go back to what is written on this board here. This House believes that it is wrong to raise money for social welfare through national lotteries. They first went to this House. They said Scandinavia. Fine. They said there's no need in Scandinavia because taxes bring us all the money that we could possibly want. Now, you can say that we are taxing 60% of our people, but the facts on the ground are that the government doesn't have money. So where does the government get money from? Beggars cannot be choosers, ladies and gentlemen. And at times like these, wherever the money comes from, it is a good thing. If we can get money in a particular way without causing enormous economic or social or political cost to our people, then that is good money that we can use for social welfare. So when they defined this House, they knew what they were buying into. Now, they next went to wrong in their whip speech, and their whip speaker, she came up and said, wrong means that the opposition, we have to prove that it is morally wrong for the government to raise money in this way. It is not. We have firstly proved that there is nothing wrong, there is no moral distinction between taxation and lotteries, that the proposed halo that they put around the holy relationship between the taxman and the taxpayer, a union that is blessed by God himself, doesn't exist. The taxpayer goes to the taxman believing that the taxman will give him certain benefits. Alright, so in this case, we are making the benefits more tangible by saying that you will have the possibility of a jackpot. And the possibility of a jackpot does not operate to the exclusion of the rest of society. We will not concentrate the funds with one person, but we will spread the leftover money for the benefit of the rest of society. Yet they somehow maintain this hypocrisy that taxes on activities such as tobacco and gambling and casinos are somehow benevolent efforts by the government to lay down a moral code for their people. They're not. If the government wanted to lay down a moral code for their people, they would ban these activities, not seek to make money of them. It is a significant source of income to the government, and they haven't in any way proved that there is a moral distinction between taxation and making government of money off lotteries. The second part, of course, is that they refuse to accept that there is economic benefits to this, that you are getting an enormous pool of money that you can use for your people. Now, when you completely ignore this by saying wrong only means morally wrong, that's all we have to prove, that it's morally wrong. What about the fact that it's economically so very right? Why would you not attempt to balance those? They haven't attempted to balance those at all. Third is by far the slimiest. It's the factor that the interpretation of raise money. Again, it came out in their whip speech, and it's something that shocked us completely because from the first two speakers, we've been talking about raising money using gambling as a voluntary activity. That was the presumption that this House proceeded on for the entire length of 4 speakers or so. And then their 5th speaker comes up and says, oh, you know what they're going to do? They're going to force people into buying lottery tickets. How exactly, ladies and gentlemen, is that not another form of taxation? That's not, making money off lotteries. It's a parallel system of taxation that says, okay, one person can make a jackpot. Gambling is a voluntary activity, and this is by far the slimiest thing they've done, by suggesting that the model that the opposition proposes in this case is one that makes the buying of lottery tickets absolutely mandatory in all segments of the population. It is rather the burden on them to prove that any model of lottery linking with government welfare is something that will not work. They've certainly not told us why a voluntary system of gambling that ties into government welfare is something that will not work to the benefit of the Scandinavian nation. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to close.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the last speech of today's debate. We have a right to the government.
We are not trying to win this debate by saying that there is no need for money in Scandinavia because the government is very rich, but we simply contextualize this debate in Scandinavia because these are welfare states and we believe this is a fair ground to do this debate. But on the more important level, we believe on a motion which principally states whether something is right or wrong. We believe the moral and the ethical issues are the most important arguments at any given day, ladies and gentlemen. But more importantly, we believe that there is a difference between the way government taxes individuals, and we understand that taxes can be direct, indirect, VAT, and many other forms, being a student of economics. But we say, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a differentiation between the government collecting money from people when people do not make informed choices. Because how? Because if they misinterpret us, we have never told that the government actually forces all of the people to buy tickets. But we say, ladies and gentlemen, in such a scenario, when they themselves conceive to the fact that Iceland and Finland are in despair, it naturally goes on to show that social welfare problems are not working properly because the government is bankrupt. At that point of time, ladies and gentlemen, the third speaker makes a contradiction because it says that, not all the people does gambling, only some people do gambling. If some people do gambling, we believe that amount of money is not significant to bring any change in Iceland or Finland, ladies and gentlemen. But on the moral level, we believe it's unfair for the government to receive that money, and we believe that is the debate today. But moreover, we say, ladies and gentlemen, that in general, the burden of this house, of the government, is to prove that what happens when the government takes money from gambling and not from casinos or any other sources, because that is a completely different debate, ladies and gentlemen. Our burden is to tell you that why the government should not receive money from gambling, should not take money from gambling, should not take in a situation when people do not make informed choices, ladies and gentlemen, and is directed by the motivation of monetary incentives, ladies and gentlemen. But moreover, we say Iceland and Finland recently, in all newspapers and even the economists, have shown significant improvements of growth, economic growth and economic recovery, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, we believe that the accusations they are making is not of significant concern at any level. They say we have not engaged them on the economic aspect. We say we do, ladies and gentlemen, because we simply tell you that there is a differentiation. This is a debate on morality. We believe first, the government is not morally correct when it is trying to take money out of people because the government knows that everyone is directed by motivation. Yes, private organizations can do that, and if people make choices, it's their own business. But the government cannot do it because we believe that the social contract enables the government and puts a responsibility on the government not to violate and not to exercise any kind of manipulation on the needs of people, because people who gamble needs money. They are directed by the incentivization and greed of money, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe the government should not manipulate this greed and certainly not use the money of this greed, people who lost money, for the benefits of other people. They do not understand our concept of reason, because we simply tell you, ladies and gentlemen, because when I lose money and my next door neighbor is actually getting any social unemployment benefits because he is unemployed, I will always feel a certain amount of hatred for the government, because the government is actually directing my money which I lost to social, for actually making him benefited. We say, ladies and gentlemen, yes, social welfare programs applies to all in general, but social welfare programs also apply on a need-to-need basis. And we believe people who needs the money more, especially poor people, actually will get the money more. And we believe even in that case, people who lost money will feel the same resentment. What is this debate about? Whether or not the government should A, take the money, and B, use the money. We believe, one, the government should not take the money because people cannot make proper decisions, as I have clearly told you in my Prime Minister's speech. And on the second level, B, we say they should not use the money because, one, the people who get benefited out of this money will only give rise to social resentment. The people do not, on the first place, the government even do not deserve this money. People are already paying a lot of taxes, ladies and gentlemen, and we believe it is unfair to actually capitalize on someone's greed. That is something the government is not principally supposed to do. Thank you.
Alright, thank you very much. I thank all the speakers. Invite you across the